time may not be like a river that flows swift and sure in one direction, but 14 years sure take a lot. After years of boring us with yet another Assassin's Creed game, or another same-ish Far Cry, Ubisoft has finally released a new title in the Prince of Persia series. The Lost Crown does not take place in the same universe as either the Sands of Time trilogy or 2008's reboot. But after being starved for content for so long, personally I was able to forgive that pretty quickly. Nevertheless, because Prince of Persia is a series so dear to my heart, I wanted to talk a little about the new game's story, which tends to be criminally overlooked in most reviews. Time and time again, while watching videos about Prince of Persia The Lost Crown, I came across people complaining about how its story and characters had potential, but overall didn't leave much of a mark. And I can certainly see why. There are many problems with it, even though at times Ubisoft Montpellier's game comes pretty close to greatness. This will not be a gameplay review of The Lost Crown, as there are a lot of those already on YouTube. I would say it's a competent Metroidvania that has some cool ideas when it comes to combat and puzzles, while also feeling a bit too safe with its level design and traversal mechanics. And let's leave it at that. The game's plot and characters, on the other hand, need further examination, so be warned for spoilers. Also, if you like what you see, please consider subscribing to the channel and liking the video. It really helps us a lot. In the Prince of Persia The Lost Crown, we play as Sargon, one of the Immortals, which was a real unit in the Persian army during the Achaemenid Empire. The game's Immortals are of course way different than the real-life counterparts, more akin to a blend of modern superheroes and Dragon Ball Z characters. But even using this name shows the level of idea behind this game's world. The Lost Crown creators wanted to put a spin on ancient Persia's history and mythology, while also maintaining a level of vagueness that would let them tell their own story. Because of that, we got mentions about Ahura Mazda, or as he was called in Prince of Persia, Ormazd, Ahriman, non-specified King Darius, the Kushan Empire, Anahita, Simurgh, Ashdaha, and why the game's setting takes place in Mount Kaf. All those references are what really started to make me appreciate the story on a deeper level, because its surface level plot isn't anything complex, or at least doesn't seem like it is in the beginning. Sargon is the youngest of the Immortals, tasked with retrieval of Prince Hassan, after our protagonist's mentor kidnaps him for unknown reasons and brings him to Mount Kaf. After arrival, our companions quickly spread out, and leave Sargon to explore the setting by himself. So starts the Metroidvania. And here we also come across the first major obstacle in new Prince of Persia's storytelling. The creators clearly want to tell a standard story with a grand scale, modern cutscenes, and a regular sense of progression from point A to point B. Those narration devices, however, don't mesh well together with a Metroidvania style of gameplay, which is non-linear, sprawling in many directions at once, and mainly concentrated on recounting the events through the environment. The Lost Crown does a little bit of that too, yet it also wants to eat that AAA cake, which makes for a very uneven and rushed start. We don't really get to know major characters besides Sargon, especially before the first major twist puts our relationship with them on its head. Pretty much only Varam gets a substantial backstory and real motivations for his actions, but only after his betrayal, which makes the first twist of the game both incredibly obvious and very jarring. And I will actually say that Varam has great potential as both an antagonist and a potential protagonist for a hypothetical DLC, showing how he got his own powers from Simurgh. His true first boss fight is extremely cool, with great time manipulation gimmick that dates back to Sands of Time trilogy. His relation with Darius, Queen Tomoris and Hassan makes sense. Unfortunately, his long-term plans boil down to being a madman with a god complex, which is a real shame. Without a doubt, The Lost Crown's story's biggest strength is its willingness to play with an idea of crossing fates, different timelines and universes. Even though it's a completely new story, it doesn't feel disconnected from previous Prince of Persia games. Heck, it even manages to make them have more sense with a kind of multi-universal approach to world building. Thanks to that, all different princes from the past can coexist without any one of them feeling fake. I know that multiverses are becoming a bit of a dead horse because of Marvel's recent failures and oversaturation of those kind of stories. Believe me, I am pretty sick of them too. But The Lost Crown has crumbs of a wonderful multiverse story sprinkled throughout, exemplified by fights with different versions of Sargon. Again, its great use of Metroidvania style of storytelling. Yet, this game's biggest strength quickly turns out to be its biggest disappointment as well. It seems like The Lost Crown's developers wanted time shenanigans to be a core of their main story, but couldn't be bothered to actually implement it. We hear about NPCs trapped in the flow of time, only we don't really engage with them beside a handful of one-dimensional side quests. The fascinating idea of parts of Mount Kaf being stuck in time gets like 2 very brief mentions, and gameplay-wise serves almost no purpose apart from unlocking fast travel monuments. And how exactly there are many versions of Sargon roaming about never gets an exhaustive explanation too. The Lost Crown's final hours look like a graveyard of abandoned ideas and story threads. The moment that the main quest becomes the most interesting, which is after the fight with Ashdaha in my opinion, is also when it all begins to crumble down to pieces. And I'm not exaggerating. These are some of the big and small plots that are left dangling in the air after this story beat plays out. The concept of Rashabar the Black Wind that destroys all in his path. Ashdaha's rivalry with Simurgh and the danger of freeing Ahriman's beast from its prison. The idea that getting celestial arrows from Ashdaha might be a trick. The reasoning behind Anahita's kidnapping of Prince Hassan. We know that Tomoris gave her that order, but why? What were Nate and Rajan doing during the whole story, and what actually happened to the latter? The fisherman in a raging sea. And finally, the Three Princes prophecy from the Prophecy of Mount Kaf side quest. The last one is probably the most important out of all of these. Most of the side quests in Prince of Persia The Last Crown are pretty inoffensive. They give a bit of context and flavor to the world of the game without being all too important on their own. There are, however, 2 exceptions. Prophecy of Mount Kaf and the Impossible Climb side quests, because both hide in them the real truth about Sargon and his origin. Ever since people found out that in A Lost Crown we won't be playing as Prince, but one of the Immortals, there was quite an uproar in the pop community. Many people were upset, and I don't blame them. I was upset too. The game's Prince seemed so unimpressive in comparison with earlier iterations. The thing is, during the main story we find out that Prince Hassan isn't even a rightful heir to the Persian throne. Varam is. The developers managed to pull a fast one on us, and it's not even the whole picture. Players who managed to finish both mentioned side quests found out that there were not 2 but 3 princes, and the whole Sargon is only one of the Immortals farce is actually a huge bait and switch. The knowledge of Sargon's true heritage is a huge revelation, and one that isn't brought up at all in the finale of the game. whether we find out about the prophecy that clearly foretells Sargon's death or not, doesn't change the outcome in the slightest. And it's a huge wasted opportunity. The idea of inevitable and unchangeable fate is rooted deep in the Prince of Persia mythos. It's the base of Warrior Within's story.
Whoa. Don't you know? You cannot change your fate.
What do you mean?
Like you, she knows her own fate. She has seen it in the timeline. But where you fight it, she has submitted. She accepts it.
You are the Empress!
I told you to leave, and yet you kept coming back. I began to wonder. If you could change your fate, perhaps I could change mine.
You are a fool, Prince! No matter what you do, you still fail! Just as I have tried, and just as I have failed.
I am the architect of my own destruction.
But the concept that some events are bound to happen and repeat gets a lot of attention in the Two Thrones, The Forgotten Sands, and 2008's reboot as well. It even wouldn't be that hard to implement that particular story thread into the final confrontation with Varam. And it could also be a nod to one of the past games. I know that alternate endings in Warrior Within were and still are a bit of divisive topic. Still, doing a similar thing here would be more reasonable. Sargon's decision whether to sacrifice himself for the sake of Varam's legitimacy or let him save the crumbling world not only could, but should be based on our own knowledge of his royal descent. It would actually give Sargon more motivation to try and reason with his old commander. Since they both are prisoners of fate and princes that weren't meant to be, their stories become parallel. Because although Sargon tells young Varam that he'll never give up on his older self, he doesn't do anything really. That kind of ending would give much needed humanity to both our protagonist and antagonist. Instead, we got a jarring, nonsensical, and utterly flat ending in which a walking, talking god complex spouts some insane shit. A hero gets a power-up because he starts to believe in himself, even though not once during the story we get the feeling that he's even a little doubtful about his abilities. And finally, the beaten bad guy sacrifices his life for absolutely no reason at all. We then cut to black and see Sargon hinting, not even stating clearly in front of the court, that Queen Tomoris murdered King Darius. He doesn't have any proof, or not anymore Prince Hassan's backing, yet somehow he doesn't get thrown in the jail immediately. Instead, he just sits outside and most likely gets Simurgh's blessing or something. The finale gets even more muddled thanks to the after-credits scene that actually would make more sense if it were played before the previous one. It does seem to take place earlier after all. And then, that's it. Everything about the Lost Crown's ending points out to a rushed development and cut content. Right now, we don't have any inside stories detailing if that was the case. But the severity of this game's chopped finale and a multitude of abandoned plot points, not to mention the state of modern Ubisoft, tell me That's more than likely. And I really, really wish it wouldn't be so. I love the Prince of Persia series, even including the live-action movie, and had a lot of fun with The Lost Crown. It just pains me to see how many aspects of this game's plot are so close to greatness just to stumble on the last stretch in such a catastrophic way. That's all for this week's video. I realize that in our Arcane X Moby Dick one, I strongly hinted that the topic of the next project will be a certain Mr. J. That video is still being written, rest assured. It just will take a while, and I didn't want to leave you without any content for so long. So apart from the Lost Crown video, look forward to another short review coming soon. Bye!